conversation. Welcome to Bethel Church on a Sunday morning. And a special welcome to Everett and John and Dottie, who've had some struggles over the winter. And
all the prayers.
All the prayers, yes, indeed. I just got chills just thinking about it. It's so cool. Let's just open in prayer this morning, and we'll do some worship and hear a great message. Thank you so much, Lord, for drawing us here this morning. Thank you for the bells that announce to the community that here we are. We get to worship you, Lord, in freedom, and we don't take that for granted. Thank you for opening our hearts and minds this morning to what it is to worship you and to hear your word, and hopefully to apply it to our lives and out into the community this week, Lord. Thank you in your name, Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Yes, kind of stand as you're able.
Praise That song, I haven't sung that in a while, Take My Life and Let It Be. Man, if you listen to all the words that we sang, basically it's everything. It's total surrender. And I don't know about you, but for control freaks like me, that's a tough thing to do. I regularly, almost every week, have to do one of these numbers. Just okay, Lord. Andy, where would you like me to stand? I want to be
wherever you want.
hello to people that might be joining us online or later. I'll just try and stand in a way where you use your wide angle lens for the guy up here. But to let go, I mean, that is so hard. And to take my life, take my treasure, take my time, take my talents, take everything. Some people say, Lord, let me be. You take, and isn't that why we recognize that it's not just about our salvation and eternity that's part of us giving our lives to the Lord and surrender, but it's everything. It's total surrender. And friends, let me just say, anecdotally, it's the only way to live. And surrender. It's the only way to live. I had a conversation with a pastor on the way up here, driving a beautiful ride from Wausau up here yesterday afternoon, and it went by so quickly. I missed my wife. She gives her greetings. She wasn't able to join me this weekend, but I was talking to this pastor, and he said that we were talking about an individual that he's doing staff in their church, and just about how he's turned back to drugs and alcohol, and his life is spiraling. He's lost his marriage. He's got 6 kids, and his home is in disarray. The police have been. And I thought, he's turning to things that he thinks will take care of his problems. And all he finds is that they're good swimmers. You can't drown your problems. But when you give your life to the Lord and you give it to him, give those difficulties, those struggles, he may not take them away, but he'll give you a different coping mechanism. And his grace is new and his mercies are new each day. So this morning I'd like to bring a message from 2 Corinthians chapter 4. But before I begin, just a couple things. Thank you. I had a great meal last night, and then a great breakfast this morning with somebody that's staying in a wonderful place last night. And like Mike said, I've got AT&T. So those of you who live on the island are like, oh, poor fool. Pity the fool who has AT&T on the island here, And so I found coverage at one spot down here, where I was lost. And then I had no coverage, and I got to the second floor of my hotel room last night, sat down in a recliner, and voila, 3 bars. I couldn't believe it. It was the perfect storm where the sky must have opened up and everything. I was able to call my wife and pray with her last night, and she sends her greetings. But thank you I just felt so at home and welcomed here by you, and have fond memories of the 2 times that we've been here now, and so thankful for just the opportunity to be here this weekend. So thank you for your kindness and your generosity.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. If we go back one slide, sorry, Amy, I jumped over. This is just a little update about, or maybe there it is, thank you. This is an update about our churches. Bethel is part of the Evangelical Free Church of America, and there are 17 districts around the United States, and the Forest Lakes District is Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula. We have 1 church in the UP. We've got a lot of work to do up in the UP. To the infinity and beyond, we got a lot of work to do there. But praise the Lord, we have 141 congregations around our state. That graphic is wrong already. 141. And we've got just a number of more church plants than 10. I need to update this slide. But God is doing something all over our state, and we give him all the praise, all the glory, and all the honor for what he's doing. our dream is to have a gospel preaching presence within 25 miles of every person in Wisconsin. Wouldn't that be amazing? A gospel preaching presence within 25 miles of every person. A friend of mine heard that and said, John, yeah, we want to make it hard to go to hell in Wisconsin. I just said, okay, yeah, we want people to come to know Jesus. And so thank you for your being part of that. And Bethel is making an impact on this island. I mean, it's so cool to see how you are being used by God to make an impact. Some people want to make a difference, and you're making an impact. And so praise the Lord for what you're doing here on this island. And it's just a joy to be back. I can't wait. Pastor Rick said to me, now you got to come back this time. But I didn't have near the line. I was number 2 on the ferry yesterday, so it was great. But I need to come back here in the summertime and see you all and to spend a couple days. But it is your hospitality. Thank you. But God's at work, and I just want to give him the glory. In your church, Lord, be glorified. We just sang that. And God is being glorified in the churches within our district. And so thank you for that. So Bethel is one of those dear churches. Well, I don't know about you, but this past year has not been an easy one. I've reflected on this. I told a couple people, I had my year review with a couple of our board members, and I said, spiritually, I think that I'm in a tremendous place. My relationship with the Lord has just been so sweet. My times with him as I've been able to be in his word and fellowship and driving and hearing him through prayer and etc. But I said, emotionally, I'm just spent. You live through social distancing, which part of social distancing about social isolation. My wife went to work for 13 weeks. It was just me and the dogs, and 9 to 10 Zoom meetings a day. And I'm telling you, it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm a people person. I need people to hug. Hey, how you doing? And it's like isolated. And then we watched our country go to war internally, both politically and activist-wise. Then we had that not too contentious of an election. and then we had the fear, the anxiety of what COVID could do to us personally. And you throw all that in there, and there's just been a heaviness. And with that, I think emotionally, our tanks, they're pretty close to E. And that, I think, leads to some physical just tiredness and exhaustion. And I love what Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. He says, don't give up. Another translation says, don't lose heart. I thought, what a wonderful picture. Don't lose heart. Don't give up. Don't lose heart. Now, I'm not going to give a self-help, self-talk this morning, okay? Because, friends, we know that doesn't work. Some people like to take Romans 8:28 and remove it completely from Romans 8:29. We know that all things work together for good to those who love God. And then we put a period. But we don't add verse 29, which talks about what good is. The definition of good is us being conformed to the image of Jesus Christ. So friends, things may not get better in your life while you're here on earth. From a human perspective. You may not have a smooth road. God might call you to carry a cross, to carry a thorn in the flesh, to carry a broken relationship that you're recovering from. Who knows what God's going to ask you to carry? He's working them for good. The problem is how we define good, isn't it? My definition of good is, oh man, the sky's beautiful like today. But that's not necessarily God's definition of good. God is more concerned about shaping you to the image of his Son than he is your ease and your benefit. And that's a hard one, my friends. That's a hard one. Because we think, man, I've given my life to Jesus. I'm following him. Man, life should be so much better than it is. But that may not be God's plan. God's plan is perfect. And it's always interesting to see how time, when we walk with the Lord and we look back, it's kind of like the footprints in the sand poem. Those difficult times where there's only one set of footprints, and you say, Lord, what was going on? He said, I was carrying you through those times. And God is working in our lives to accomplish something far greater than what we can ever hope, imagine, or dream. So with that as kind of the intro, I tell a quick story. Thomas Edison was interviewed by a young reporter about his progress in inventing the electric light bulb. The reporter had heard that there had been 9,000 attempts, and he said, do you ever feel like a failure, Mr. Edison, on your invention? Perplexed, Edison looked at the young reporter and said, young man, why would I feel like a failure and why would I give up? I now know definitively over 9,000 ways that the electric light bulb will not work. Success is just in my grasp. What a perspective to sit there and say, no, I don't feel like a failure. Shortly after his 10,000th attempt, Thomas Edison was able to invent the electric light bulb. He said this, quote, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try one more time. And there is something about persistence. I was thinking this last week, I was reading in James chapter 1, and it talks about trials. And we pray for wisdom in the context of trials, James 1, 2-5. And it says in there that perseverance, it says, let perseverance have its way in your life. And then it says, then you'll be complete, mature, lacking nothing. And I'm sitting there going, man, I don't want to perseverance is that idea of being under the pressure. Just feeling that weight on you. But James is saying, let that have its perfect way. Let God work in you when you're in the vice. Let God work in those moments. Surrender, don't fight it. He's trying to accomplish something that'll make you mature, complete, lacking nothing. What a promise. Not easy to do, but the end result of what God wants to accomplish. It's like the refinement of what happens when you take a diamond and all the things that have to go through, the pressure on that to produce what God wants to do in our lives. Well, it's no secret that we do feel like giving up. God's Word is filled with promises, and I would say to you, dear friends, that there are over 360-some promises in God's Word. Specific promises. Some are conditional. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your paths. Now, we say direct your path. You need to acknowledge Him. You need to lean not on your own understanding. Those are conditional promises, but there are over 360-some promises in God's Word. And friends, one of the keys to the Christian life is finding God's promises and saying, God, you said you would do this. I'm going to be obedient, and you said you would do this. Let me give you just a couple of them real quick. Philippians 1:6, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Galatians 6:9, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we'll reap a harvest if we do not give up. Ephesians 6, verse 10, finally be strong, Lord, in the power of His, and in His mighty power. God has promises that He wants to give to you as His dear children. He said some things in His Word, and God is a God who keeps His Word, and He keeps His promises. Paul is a guy, I think, who is probably one of the most well-qualified to talk about not giving up. Listen to some of the things that he went through. Okay? And I have this kind of in my mind, and I think about it when I'm having a bad day. Because we all have bad days. That's part of being a human. But he was put in prison. He was flogged with whips. Not once, not twice. 5 times he was beaten with whips and a cat of 9 tails, which is almost to death. But 5 times he was flogged that way. He was stoned with rocks. He wasn't the other side. Those of you who love to laugh, you can laugh. It was a horrible joke. But he was stoned with rocks. He was shipwrecked 4 different times. Now, I would think twice about getting on a boat with Paul. Paul shows up the dock, shows up the ferry. I'll take the next one, please. 4 times, and in one of those he spent 2 days in the open sea. Could have used a good Coast Guard like arm to come bail him out of the water. And but two days at open sea, and then he was bitten by a poisonous viper while sitting around a campfire. I mean, what's up with that? All the other people sitting there, and it picks Paul to jump out and bite him, you know. And God miraculously healed him. He went without sleep, without food. He fled for his life. And in spite of all of these things, he encourages the Christ followers in Corinth. Don't give up. And I'd like to give you 4 reasons why you shouldn't give up. And as Andy said, I've got questions on the back of here, and you can be prepared and do homework ahead of coming to the Bible study with these questions to go through them. Or if you want to talk through them with someone else, call them up and just, they weren't here, and just talk about these things on the back. And there's also, don't give up. If you're making a grocery list, I get it. It's okay. You can write that in the margins too. But if you want to take notes, there's 4 things to help us not give up. The first reason I see that we should be hopeful and not give up, that Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians 4, is because God gives us a ministry. Don't give up, friends, because God's given us a ministry. Verse 1 of 2 Corinthians 4 says, therefore. And anytime you see a therefore in Scripture, you want to see what it's there for. And it's referring to what was previously mentioned. And what was previously mentioned in chapter 3, verse 18 is, it says, and we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed in the same image from one degree of glory to another, for this comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. So this is our amazing ministry. God has given us the gospel, this transformation of being transformed into the same image of the one who has made it possible for us to come to fellowship with him. And then we read on, and it says, therefore, having this ministry, by the mercy of God, we do not lose heart. We do not give up. But we have renounced disgraceful, underhanded ways, and we refuse to practice cunning or to tamper with God's word. But by the open statement of the truth, we would commend ourselves to everyone's conscience in the sight of God. Then verse 3, and even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. You know, and I have to remember that. We're going through this cohort as a staff at this time. We made an 18-month commitment to go through this evangelism course with the Billy Graham Evangelism Association at Wheaton College. And we have a scorecard. It's called a temperature card. And every month we have to write what our evangelism temperature is. You know, and during COVID, I had to go 4. I had to go low. On a 1 to 10 scale, I had to say, you know, I'm feeling sorry for myself. That's the problem. I'm just being honest with you. That's where I am. But we rate on a 1 to 10 where we are on that. And one of the things as I pray, one of the things, it's a blessed principle where you look to pray for someone. You look for opportunities to, or you listen, B is you're praying. Be aware of areas to pray. L is listen to what's going on in their life. E is eat with them. What a great, I love that. You know, eat with them. And then S is look for areas to serve and be served. And then the final S of the bless is to share your story. And, you know, one of the things that I've noticed in this, I got a new app from a friend that I had a trial period for a while, and it gave me the lot lines GPS of all my neighbors. So while I was still in the 30-day free trial of that, where I had the names, I went down and wrote down the names of all of my neighbors around. And my father pastored for 19 years in Bermuda, and one of the things that impressed me, we got to go there 17 times on missions trips, was the first thing I do when I get to his house, and that reminds me coming here to this island is such a precious. He would walk me 2.5 blocks down to the ocean to hear those waves like you folks get to enjoy. And as we walked down, he would give me the spiritual temperature of every one of his neighbors. Every one of them, for 2 blocks. And tell me about the last interactions he'd had. He'd say, you know, someone need to stop here and pray for so-and-so. Because they just had this happen. We need to pray that they'll come to Jesus. You know, and that just, in my community in Rib Mountain, I knew 2 of my neighbors, but I didn't know any. And so I wrote down the names of all my neighbors while I had this free app. I should tell you all what that app is. I'll tell you what, and you can get the. Of course, here you probably know her, but You don't need that help. You don't need the help. But to pray for those people. But this passage has helped me so much to recognize that even if the gospel is veiled to those who are perishing. Have you ever noticed we talk about Jesus sometimes to people, and they look at you like you're from Mars? This is why. Their eyes are blinded from the gospel, from the truth. And that blinding is by the enemy. And in their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing. And what are they keeping from seeing? The light of the gospel of the glory of Christ. And so I prayed and said, Lord, may my neighbors see the glory of the light of the gospel in me. I've been given a gift. That gift is the gift of the gospel. God's given us that gift. And so one of the things in neighboring, and trying to be a good neighbor and praying for my neighbors that I go by name, I was on Facebook and I just saw the name of this neighbor. He's a police officer. He's a canine police officer. And he and his German Shepherd, I wish I had a dog that was that obedient. I mean, he's walking, that dog's just right by him. Like, the dog just, yes, But, yeah, we all do, don't we? But I saw that he just award because he and his dog had done something where they rescued someone, or there was a gun that someone had, and they came into that and were able to find that the dog found the gun that somebody had tried to dispose of in a crime that had happened. And I said, there's an opportunity to circle back and to go down and congratulate him or give him a card or something, to be able to just continue to try and have the glory of the light of the gospel to turn the light on the life of someone. We've been given this gift for, verse 5 says, for what we proclaim is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. Friends, we've been given this precious gift. It's the good news. It's the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we've been given that opportunity to share that with people who desperately need to experience the life of Jesus Christ and what he can do. Our broken friends, family members need Jesus. So we don't lose heart because we've been given this amazing ministry. A second thing that I see here in the text in verses 7 through 12, we're not to give up because God has given you a ministry. Verse 7 says God's given us a treasure. He's given us a ministry. Now he also gives us a treasure. Verse 7 says, we have this treasure in jars of clay. There was a Christian group called Jars of Clay that I used to love to listen to. I'm dating myself in Christian music. But basically, that comes from, we're all just cracked pots. Did you know that? You can look at your friend and your spouse, whoever you're sitting next to, and just say, you're a beautiful crackpot. Just go ahead and do that. I won't look, and you can just tell that to the person next to you. You're a beautiful crackpot. But we won't speak to that anymore. But we do have a treasure in this jar of clay. We are just jars of clay, crackpots, if you would, and that we're showing this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We're hard-pressed on every side. We talked about that a little earlier. Not crushed. We're perplexed but not in despair. Persecuted but not abandoned. Struck down but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life in you. Friends, the gospel, we've also been given this treasure in our jars of clay, this treasure. We've been given a ministry, that ministry of reconciliation, of transformation, but we've also been given this treasure, and the treasure is the gospel. What a treasure. I look so forward to the events of Easter. For me, it's the Super Bowl. I mean, Scripture says without the resurrection, we would be lost. And friends, the resurrection is it. The resurrection is the game changer. It's because of the resurrected Jesus Christ that we have hope. Amen. It's because of the resurrected Jesus Christ that we can live victoriously. It's all because of Jesus and the empty tomb. Because of that, friends, you have hope. I have hope. And the resurrection has changed it all. The gospel, the good news that Jesus died, that he was buried, but 3 days later he rose again, conquering both sin and death. He who knew no sin, yet for our sake became sin so that we could become right, or have the righteousness of God. Friends, you have been given a treasure. What a beautiful treasure in your cracked pot that we all walk around in. Romans 1 verse 16, Paul went on to say, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone who believes. And that word power is the same word that the word dynamite. That same root word, dynamite. And the power, friend, I always have to remind myself, is in the message, not in the messenger of the crackpot. The power is in the message. It's the message of Christ's death, burial, and resurrection that transforms lives. Now, he allows us to have our story be part of that beautiful transformation, but the power isn't in us. The power is in the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, missionary Hudson Taylor was used greatly by God in China, and he said this, quote, all God's giants have been weak people who did great things for God because they relied on the treasure within them. And it's the treasure that's in the crackpot. So don't give up, friends. God's given you a ministry. He's given you a treasure. A third thing that I see, and we'll keep flying here, God gives us faith. God gives us faith. Look at verses 13 to 15. Since we have the same spirit of faith, according to what has been written, I believed, and so I spoke. We also believe, and so we also speak, knowing that he who raised the Lord Jesus will raise us also with Jesus and bring us with you into his presence. All this is for your benefit. All of this is for your benefit. All the things that Paul said he was struggling through and carrying, all of it was for the benefit of those people that he was ministering to. The difficulties that we go through were for the benefit of others, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. How did Paul keep going? He had a confident faith. The same Jesus who met him on the road to Damascus was the same Jesus who was carrying him 2 days being shipwrecked and being at sea. The same Jesus who was with him when he was in prison. The same Jesus after he had been flogged the 4th and the 5th time. That's why he didn't give up. Pastor Richard Wormbrandt was a Romanian pastor of Jewish heritage, and he spent 14 years in prison because of his outspoken Christian witness and faith in Jesus Christ. 3 of those years were in solitary confinement. His wife, Sabina, was in prison for 3 years in a labor camp and was told that her husband was dead, that he died. Through it all, neither of them gave up hope, and they had an unwavering faith in the same one who said, he who began a work in you will be faithful to carry it on to completion. They didn't know what that was going to be, if it meant dying in prison, but they had an unwavering faith. And when they were released from prison, neither of them wavered in their faith. After being ransomed from prison, Richard and Sabina came to the U.S. and founded Voice of the Martyrs. And friends, since 2011, Voice of the Martyrs has rescued more than 43,000 persecuted Christ followers. The faith that God gave them to withstand being imprisoned, God saw them through with that faith and allowed them to be able to use their faith in the resurrected Jesus to bring hope to millions around this world. In verse 15, Paul says, all this is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. Paul not only trusted in God, but he knew that he was doing would benefit many people. And more people were being reached by the grace of God because of his ministry. He didn't lose heart because he had this confident faith that he who began a work in him would carry it on to completion. A faith that God was working and many people would be reached and benefited. So don't lose heart. Don't give up, my friends. Have a confident faith that God is working in your circumstances. We just need to surrender those to him and say, God, I want to be obedient. If I'm obedient to what you have for me, you'll direct my steps. God has given you a ministry, a treasure, and a faith. And in conclusion here, my favorite point in this, God gives us eternity. God gives us eternity. It says in verse 16, therefore. What's it therefore? Because God is working all of this for your benefit, and more people are reached by God's grace. Therefore, because of that, we do not lose heart. And if you're over 50 years of age like I am today, friends, you resonate with this next statement. Though outwardly we are wasting away. My dad used to say, what doesn't hurt doesn't work anymore. You know, isn't it true that as we get older, there are pains and things that we carry. And I never would have made it as a dentist with the last name Payne. I just know that. I would never. Can you imagine? Come see us with Payne. I never would have flown. But recognizing though outwardly we are wasting away. Listen to this, friends. Paul said, inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Outward pain and difficulties, inwardly being renewed day by day. John Quincy Adams was walking on the streets of Boston in his last days. And as he's walking along, someone came by and he said, well, how's John Adams doing? And he goes, John Adams, he says, the lenses and the windows are pretty, I can't see out of them too well. He says the thatch on the roof is almost gone. And he said, I wouldn't doubt if before winter, John Adams, the tent that he's living in is gone. But he says, inwardly, I'm doing better than I ever have done before. And to recognize that outwardly, there's part of the curse that we all live under. We're falling apart. We do what we can to try and take care of ourselves. And I laugh at my wife all the time because she walks by a mirror and she can't stop and not look at it. And I just say, sweetheart, is everything okay? And she goes, you're so spoiled. You cut your hair so short, you didn't have to do anything. You just get up, take a shower, and go. And I said, you're right, it's awesome. Just put deodorant and something to make it smell a little better on, and we're good. But we do all we can to fix up the outer shell that we're in for a while. And I just said to her, she still colors her hair, and I said, now, sweetheart, if anybody ever asks me how my daughter's doing, or asks you how your father's doing, and you're with me, you're done coloring your hair. And she says, no, you can take care of that. You can do something about that. But outwardly we are wasting away, but inwardly being renewed. But listen to what he says in verse 17. Our light and momentary troubles. And you're like, Paul, what do you mean light and momentary? You don't know my situation. You don't know my circumstance. And yet all that he'd gone through, he said, these light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. And then I love verse 18. We fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Friends, Paul said don't give up because we have an eternal perspective. We recognize that outwardly things may not be as we once were, as we wish them to be, but inwardly we can be renewed day by day. And these trials that we're going through and these troubles are achieving an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. And we need to fix our eyes on what is eternal, not on what is temporary. Two investments, friends, that will reap eternal dividends. Any investment made in the Word of God, and an investment made in other people. When we make investments in people and in the Word of God, they have eternal dividends that they yield. I close with this illustration. On October of 1982, more than 78,000 people attended the Wisconsin-Michigan State football game, and as usual, many of them brought radios. And it was in the third quarter, and Michigan State was driving down to score. And Coach Dave McClain at the time couldn't understand why 78,000 Bucky Badger fans all of a sudden began to cheer for the Michigan State Spartans. He was confused. His players were confused. Why are they cheering when Michigan State is going down to score and possibly beat us and lose this game? Well, he found out later that 70 miles away, the Brewers were playing at County Stadium Milwaukee County State in Game 4 of the World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals. And they were down one game in the series, and they were trailing the Cardinals 5-1 as the Badgers-Spartan game got off to a slow start. And then the Brewers rallied behind the hitting of Robin Yount, Cecil Cooper, and Gorman Thomas. And it was in the midst of that third quarter that all the fans were cheering because the beloved Brewers were coming back from losing. And that to me is a little bit of a broken illustration, but there were 78,000 people who were watching something, but their minds were somewhere else. And they really have a different perspective. Both the Brewers and the Badgers went on to win that day. Dave McClain was very happy to report. His wife was on staff with Fellowship of Christian Athletes with me, and what a dear couple they were. 50 years of age, true story, he just increased his life insurance policy, went for a swim like he usually did at the UW swimming pool, stepped out of the swimming pool, dropped dead of a massive heart attack, and went home to be with Jesus. In tremendous shape. And now you look at one of the south end zones, I think it's south end zone of Camp Randall Field, and it's called the Dave McClain Center up there, named after him. And yet here he was wondering why in the world is everybody, but because these people had their focus somewhere else. And friends, our focus needs to recognize that we are looking somewhere else, that there's an eternal perspective. Now, we live here on earth, and there are things that we are to do. Continue to keep the faith, to take our ministry, to take that treasure, to all of those things, to keep the faith. But we've been given a perspective that's different. We are not home yet. We're not home yet. This is not home. God has prepared a place for us. And Jesus said in John 14, going to prepare a place for you. When I come again, I'll take you to be with me. And we're not home yet. We're not home yet. We have an eternal perspective, and that helps us to not give up. I'd like to close with this passage of Scripture, a benediction over you. Hebrews 12, 1 and 2, which says, therefore, again, another therefore, therefore, in light of everybody that was just mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11, the hall of faith, Abraham, Rahab, all of those people, in light of all those people, were surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I wonder if the Lord allows it. And when I also have a particularly difficult circumstance or whatever, I often think of this, and I see my father, who in 2015 went home to join the Lord, and I see him in that cloud of witnesses. And he's sitting there saying, finish your race. Because the thing is, we all have been given a different race to run. And we don't know what that race is, but we need to be faithful to run that race. We recognize there's a cloud of witness up there who are saying, keep going, don't give up, keep running the race. And then this is the most important part of that race. We lay aside weight and sin that clings so obviously, and let us run with endurance that race set for us, looking to Jesus. He's at the front of all of those witnesses. He's seated at the right hand of the Father, interceding on your behalf. He's the founder and the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Friends, don't give up. You've been given a ministry. If you know Jesus, you have a ministry. You are in the ministry. I proclaim you're all in the ministry. You know Jesus. Praise the Lord. Amen. You've been given a treasure in your crack pot. God gives you the faith to endure. He also gives you eternity with him to recognize that we're not home yet. Father, thank you for the promises of your word. Thank you for the Apostle Paul, a man who led so well, who finished so well. And God, I pray for these dear ones here, a benediction over them, that God, that we can look to that great cloud of witnesses, that we can run our race with perseverance, recognizing that sin wants to cling to us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, and running to the end of our race for your glory and for our good. And I pray your blessing on these dear people. In Jesus' name, amen. Lord bless you. Have a great week. Be a nuisance to the devil. Give him difficulty, all right?